What's interesting about developing a rocket is that every single part of a rocket matters. There are no parts you can say, "We can overlook this." And things get even more serious when we are talking about the largest rocket ever built, the Starship. We've seen in previous launches that seemingly simple problems can cause this rocket to explode. SpaceX is working day and night to avoid repeating such mistakes and ensuring that every part of the rocket functions perfectly. Recently, there have been some problems with the booster, and SpaceX is currently fixing them. This process will take some time, resulting in a launch delay. We'll talk more about this in today's video. But before we delve any deeper, please make sure to subscribe to our channel for future updates about Starship and SpaceX's other groundbreaking achievements. As the year ends, it's clear there will be no Starship launches in 2024. SpaceX has made progress, but issues with Booster 14 and ground systems have delayed Flight 7. These problems are being addressed, but they will take time to fix. Booster 14, the first stage of the Starship rocket for Flight 7, completed a static fire test recently. However, during its move to the production site on December 10th, it stopped for 2 hours outside Mega Bay. Engineers worked on its grid fins, which are crucial for controlling the booster's descent during landing. It's unclear if these were regular adjustments or if there is a bigger issue with the booster. One major issue comes from Flight 6, where the tower's communication system failed. This system is essential for guiding the booster back to the launch tower. The failure happened due to unexpected stresses during the launch and flight, which caused the system to collapse. Without this communication, SpaceX could not test the booster catch system and had to redirect the booster to splash down in the ocean instead. This prevented them from testing one of their key systems for making Starship fully reusable. After Flight 6, other ground systems at Starbase also needed repairs. The orbital launch mount, which holds the rocket during launch, suffered damage and needs reinforcement. Protective walls and the mount itself require repairs and repainting to ensure safety for future flights. SpaceX is also upgrading the tank farm, replacing older tanks to improve storage and handling of liquid methane and oxygen. These changes are necessary to support more frequent launches in 2025, but they've added to the delays for Flight 7. Before Flight 7 of Starship can take place, several critical tests must be completed for the booster, the Starship vehicle, and the entire launch system. This booster has undergone structural integrity checks, including stress tests on its stainless steel body and joints. Engineers scanned for microfractures and verified weld quality to confirm it can withstand the forces of liftoff, ascent, and re-entry. The booster's grid fins, which are critical for controlling its descent, were thoroughly inspected. Hydraulic actuators, which control the fins, were tested for precise movement under simulated flight conditions. Next, Booster 14 underwent a cryogenic proof test. This involved filling its tanks with approximately 3,400 cubic meters of liquid nitrogen to replicate the thermal and pressure conditions of actual flight. The test checked for leaks or weaknesses in the tanks and plumbing. Following this, the booster completed a static fire test where all 33 Raptor engines were ignited simultaneously for several seconds while the booster was anchored to the ground. This test measured thrust levels, ignition timing, and the coordination between the engines and the rocket's guidance systems. The static fire produced a thrust of nearly 7,590 metric tons, and engineers analyzed the data to identify minor anomalies. The final step for the booster was the installation and testing of the flight termination system. For the Starship vehicle, similar tests were conducted. Engineers inspected the vehicle's 18,000 heat shield tiles, replacing any that showed damage or misalignment. These tiles must withstand temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius during re-entry. The Starship also underwent a cryogenic proof test with liquid nitrogen, where its 1,200 cubic meter fuel tanks were pressurized to operational levels. Any leaks or structural weaknesses were identified and addressed. The Starship's 6 Raptor engines, 3 optimized for sea level and 3 for vacuum operation, were static fired individually and in groups. This ensured each engine produced its target thrust of approximately 230 metric tons and operated within specified performance parameters. The vehicle's control surfaces, large flaps that guide its descent, were tested using hydraulic actuators under simulated aerodynamic loads equivalent to those experienced during re-entry and landing. Once individual tests on the booster and spacecraft are complete, Ship 33 will be stacked atop Booster 14 at the launch site. This process requires precise alignment and secure connections between the two stages, including the quick disconnect umbilicals that transfer fuel and power. After stacking, the entire vehicle will undergo additional tests to validate the performance of the integrated system. The full-stack cryogenic proof test involves filling the entire rocket with liquid nitrogen to verify the strength of the connection between the two stages under cryogenic conditions. Following this, a wet dress rehearsal will be conducted, where the rocket is loaded with nearly 4,800 metric tons of liquid oxygen and methane. The countdown will proceed to T-10 seconds without engine ignition, testing the fueling systems and countdown procedures. The next step is the full-stack static fire test, during which all 33 engines on the booster and 6 engines on the Starship will be ignited simultaneously while the rocket remains anchored to the launch mount. This test will confirm the performance of the combined propulsion system and the structural response of the fully assembled rocket. The flight termination system will also be tested in the stacked configuration to ensure it functions correctly in an emergency. Once these tests are completed, SpaceX will conduct final inspections. These inspections will involve thermal imaging and ultrasonic scans to identify any hidden issues. Updated flight software will be loaded, and simulations will be run to ensure the system is fully prepared for launch. Regulatory approvals have already been secured, with the FAA granting the launch license for Flight 7 on December 17, 2024. The FAA has officially approved SpaceX's Flight 7, but an official launch date has yet to be announced. While there are widespread rumors of a potential January 11th launch, this date originates from NASA's internal timeline and is not a confirmed declaration from SpaceX. The FAA's approval of Flight 7 is part of a broader agreement with SpaceX, which includes permits for 25 Starship launches in 2025. This means SpaceX plans to launch Starship nearly twice a month next year. Achieving this is a significant challenge, as the shortest time between 2 Starship launches so far has been several months. This high launch frequency will require a major reduction in turnaround time and substantial operational improvements. One of the steps SpaceX is taking to meet this target is building a second launch tower at Starbase. This additional infrastructure will allow SpaceX to prepare one Starship for launch, while another is already on the pad. The second tower will have all the necessary systems for stacking, fueling, and potentially catching boosters after their return. This dual-tower setup is critical for supporting the increased launch cadence, as relying on a single tower would likely cause delays. That's all for today's video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates.